How do I receive that ROF? How do I receive that return on failure? Get ready. You're about to learn some things that will positively change your life and your business. Number one, you have to keep failure and success together. If you're going to get a positive return out of failure, you have to stop separating failure and success. Honestly, I hear this all the time. People separate failures from success, and they basically say, now, go out and succeed. Hey, don't mess up. Don't fail. So we got all this success over here that we're trying to get, and we're trying to push back failure and say, well, don't fail, succeed. Now, we already have a problem. We've separated it. How can you separate success and failure? I've never interviewed any successful person who said, well, really, I became successful because I stopped failing. No, every person that I interview that's highly successful, they say, I succeeded in spite of my failures. They didn't say, always succeed, don't fail. They knew that wasn't possible. They knew that if they were going to really get a positive return out of the failure, they had to put them together. I have a wonderful friend. Her name is Carrie Rich. She's the CEO of Global Good Fund. And I've mentored her probably for maybe 8 or 10 years now. And she does something I find very interesting. At the end of every year, she sends out a letter to the donors of her nonprofit organization. And by the way, it's a great one, Global Good Fund. They do really good work. And the year-end letter to her donors is always the same every year as far as subject. She shares with them her 3 top failures of that year. It's very interesting. And she'll say this year, and she'll talk about 3 big failures that she had in her leadership, and she'll tell the story. And so I talked to her about it. I said, Carrie, I find that an interesting year-end letter where you're very open about your failures. I said, talk to me about that. Here's what she said. She said, first of all, I want my donors, my supporters, my contributors to know that I fail, but I own my failure. I don't dismiss it. I don't act like it didn't happen. I don't blame it on someone else. And she said, I write that letter to my donors, first of all, to show them transparency and openness, that there is humanity in my leading, that I don't always make perfect decisions. She said, I send that letter to my donors, secondly, because I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the fact that they stick with me. They still support the cause, even though they know I'm not a perfect leader. And she said the third thing, and the reason that I write that letter every year at the end of the year on my 3 greatest failures, is she said, I want them to know the lessons I've learned from those failures that will help me to be a better leader next year. Now, when she shared that with me, I thought how insightful is. Here's a lady leader who understands how to get a positive return out of the failures in her life. You got to keep success and failure together. And here's why. Failure with success brings humility. You know, we're successful and we're riding the wave and the business is doing good and we're making some money and we're getting more clients. There's kind of a high wave that we ride when we're successful. And when we fail in that success, while we're being successful, we have some misses, we have some losses. It brings into your life and my life a sense of humility that makes us a better leader. The other day, I was reading a statement by Bill Gates, and it was very interesting. He said something. He said, success alone is a lousy teacher. It makes successful people think they can't lose. How often I've seen that. I've seen highly successful people who somehow think that they're on a roll and they've got that momentum and everything's going their way and they can't lose. That is not realistic. So when you're succeeding, if you keep failure with it, when you fail, It gives you a sense of humility, which what that does for us is it makes us teachable. It makes us teachable to the lessons that life wants to give us. But let me also say this. In your failure, when you have success, it gives you tenacity. It gives you resilience. It causes you and me to kind of get out of our ditch and get going again. That's why Winston Churchill would say, success is going from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. Winston Churchill knew you keep them together. Every month, for 40 years, I've had what I call learning lunches. Every month I sit down with somebody bigger, better, faster, smarter than me, and I have a lunch with them, of which I ask them 7 questions. And one of the questions that I ask them is very simple. How has failure shaped your life? Now, I've asked that question for 40 years every month. The people bigger, better, faster, smarter than me. 100% of the time, when I ask them how failure has shaped their life, 100% of the time, regardless of the business, regardless of the experience, regardless of the age, 100% of the time, those highly successful people have said to me, I give failure the credit for helping me become successful. In other words, success in my life would not be possible if I wouldn't have had my failures. My wonderful friend Jamie Curran Lima, who just sold her cosmetic company for $1.3 billion, said to me, the way this works, John, is setbacks can become setups. She's right. She's right when we are expecting a positive return on failure. Sarah Blakely, this was interesting. She said, all my life I was taught how to deal with failure. I said, Sarah, how does that happen? She said, well, when I was going to school as kids, we would come home from school, and at the dinner table, my father every night asked us a very simple question. How did you fail today? And we would talk to him about a failure, a miss that we had. And we'd sit around that table conversation, and we as children got comfortable with failure, knowing that it would happen often. And then my father would teach us how to overcome those failures in our life. So it's so essential to get a good return on your failure. You got to keep success and failure together. Don't separate them ever again. They belong together, they work well together, and they make you the person you really want to become. That's number 1. Number 2, if you want to get a return on your failure, understand the difference between a good miss and a bad miss. You see, every day we have misses, but some of those misses, they're not hurtful at all. In fact, they're what I would call good misses. And then there are misses that, boy, when you have those, that'll set you back a little bit. So in helping people get a return on failure, I've done some studies on this and just some personal introspection. And let me give you what is the difference between a good miss and a bad miss. Now, there are more that I'm going to give you, but for example, if I have a good miss, it has a tendency to move me forward, whereas if I have a bad miss, I have a tendency to move backwards. You see, a good miss is where I make adjustments, and a bad miss is where I make excuses. Now, this can be the same miss. You see, the miss isn't the issue. How we respond to the miss determines whether it's a good one or a bad one. So when I miss something, I either can make adjustments that will help me to do better, or I can make excuses, which anyone knows that the moment that you make excuses, you're in trouble. I mean, and by the way, the best excuse that you have, whatever it is your worst excuse because you believe it. A good miss encourages me, and a bad miss discourages me. In a good miss, I learn from it. I learn from that failure. A bad miss, I don't learn from it. Maybe the bottom line behavior difference between a good miss and a bad miss is in a good miss, we make changes for the better. We say, okay, I just have to make a change here. And in a bad miss, we don't change. We just stay where we are, which basically sets up a continuation of bad miss. I kind of learned the good miss, bad miss teaching in the beginning from my mentor, John Wooden, who was the great coach for the UCLA Bruins. Basically, he's known as the greatest American coach in the last century. He won 10 national championships with his UCLA basketball team. And we were having a conversation one day in our mentoring time. And he said, John, the worst thing that can happen to a coach is to get a cheap win for the team. I said, Coach, what do you mean by a cheap win? He said, well, a cheap win is one where we didn't play well. We didn't do what we were supposed to do, but we won the game. In other words, we got by with a bad performance. He said, what happens is if we had a, quote, cheap win, it was hard for me to teach my players lessons from it. They'd say, Coach, didn't we win? Well, yes, we won, but we shouldn't have won. And we made mistakes that against a better opponent, we won't win. And he called it a cheap win. A cheap win was one where you got by with it, but down the road, it was going to catch up with you. And if you didn't make the changes that you needed to make, it would cost you in the future. When he taught that to me, I thought to myself, how true this is. In our wins, we don't do a lot of changing. We don't do a lot of introspection. My friend Rick Warren said the biggest enemy of tomorrow's success is today's success. And so we don't learn much when we're winning. But when we're losing, we stop and say, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? How do I make the changes? It gives us much more of a teachable spirit. My friend Jim Tressel, who was for many years a highly successful coach for the Ohio State Buckeye football team, he said, John, I make sure that I review our winning tapes, the tapes where we won the game. I review them as thoroughly and critically as I do the ones that we lose. What was he saying? I can't allow a good miss to become a bad miss because I didn't change the behavior of the team. The best way I think I can illustrate a good miss from a bad miss is to read you something for the next minute and a half. It's called Portia Nelson's autobiography in 5 short chapters. Listen carefully. If you do, you're going to be able to distinguish between a good miss and a bad miss. Let's go. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in it. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. Wow. It takes forever to find a way out. Okay, that's a miss. The question is it a good miss or is it a bad miss? We don't know yet. You don't know when you miss if it's good or bad until you see the response of the person. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. Immediately now, I know that she's set up for a bad miss. There wasn't any change in her place that she walked or her behavior. Here's what she says. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I am in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Bad miss. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it's there. I still fall in. It's become a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It's my fault. I get out immediately. It's still a bad miss. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Oh, it's looking better. Still a bad miss. Chapter 5. I walk down another street. Good miss. The moment she changed her behavior, the bad miss became a good miss. So in getting a return on your failure, getting a return on my failure, it's just very, very simple. We have to understand the difference between a good miss and a bad miss in our life. And we want to have good misses. Good misses help us to fail forward. Bad misses cause us always to fail backward. The third way to get a return on our failure is to embrace hard. My CEO of the John Maxwell Enterprise, Mark Cole, loves that expression. He loves to tell me, he loves to tell the team, embrace hard. If you ever read Scott Peck's highly acclaimed book, The Road Less Traveled, the first 3 words in this book not only set it up for what you're going to learn, but it is the tone of what life is truly like. Because Scott Peck, in his book, The Road Less Traveled, the first 3 words that you read in the first paragraph on the first page are these words: life is difficult. What Scott Peck wants all of us to know is that this is not easy living, that everything worthwhile is uphill. Now, here's what he said. The moment you and I embrace hard, the moment you and I say, yes, life is difficult, he said, something interesting happens. It becomes no longer difficult because now we know and have set our expectations to what life is really like. He said life becomes extremely difficult for people who think it should be easy. It becomes extremely difficult for think that everything ought to come to them quickly, that they ought to be able to take shortcuts, that there shouldn't be energy, that there shouldn't be effort, there doesn't need to be intentionality. He said that's where people have a difficult life, when they don't accept the fact that life is difficult. When I say to people everything worthwhile is uphill, what I'm trying to help them do is to begin to live what I would call an intentional life. What that means is we have to, on purpose, climb that hill. Nobody accidentally climbed a hill. Nobody ever got to the top of the hill and somebody asked them how it happened and they say, I have no idea. I just woke up and I was here. Nobody ever wrote a book on accidental accomplishments. No. To do life well, we have to understand that it's a climb every day. We have to swim upstream. No one ever drifted to a desired location. No one. No one ever just kind of didn't do anything, and one day they got somewhere and said, this is amazing. I'm not even sure how I got there. No. Life is difficult. Uphill all the way. I was speaking at a conference, and it was a large conference, a couple thousand people. I was teaching leadership all day, and people were learning, they were laughing, we were just connected really well. I was signing books in the last session before I finished, and a young man came up and gave me a book to sign, and he looked at me and said, I've decided that I want to do what you do. He said, I've watched you teach leadership, and people are loving it, and wow, they paid a lot of money to come. He said, I want to do what you do. I said, that's good. That's real good. I said, let me ask you a question. Would you like to do what I did so that you can do what I do? Now, you see, that's the question. It's not, would you like to do what somebody that's in your business is doing successfully now? Oh my gosh, I want to be at the top of the ladder. I want to make a lot of money. I want to have a lot of clients. That's not the question at all. Would you like to do what they did before you could do what they do? It's the did that's the challenge. We all want the success. We just don't want to climb the mountain. And I tell people all the time that the did comes before the do. And by the way, if you don't do the did, honestly, you're in deep doo-doo. I promise you. There's no such thing as doing it great without having to go through the adversity, the uphill climb. That's huge. So I want you to understand that to get a return on failure, you just have to embrace hard. That's what I tell my players around me all the time. That's why in my 7 companies, I tell my teams all the time, this isn't supposed to be easy. Making money isn't supposed to be easy. It takes a lot of work, takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of creativity, takes a lot of time. Everything worthwhile is uphill. Our problem is we have uphill dreams, but we have downhill habits. And one of the downhill habits that we have is trying to be successful without energy, effort, and time. That habit will never get you up that hill. You can't coast to success. Embrace hard. Number 4, if you want to get a good return on failure, this is going to be maybe the most practical thing that I give you in our teaching session today. But if you really want to get a return on your failure, you have to develop a process to get a return on your failure. In other words, there is a process, and I'm going to give you one that we have in one of our companies that will really give you a good return on your failure. And it works. In fact, I call this the success cycle, okay? And it's a cycle. It's not a journey. It's possible to take a journey and you pass something and never pass it again. You may see on a journey something just one time, never return to it. But on a cycle, you keep returning. And in our cycle of success, there are 5 different, very important components. And you can't eliminate any of them and get the return on failure that you want. So let me give it to you. I have a coaching company, okay, the John Maxwell team. We are the largest, most successful company in coaching in the world. We're just a little bit over 10 years old, and we already have 42,000 coaches in like 165 countries of the world, okay? We really understand how to build a company. And we build it by this cycle. We do 5 things continually. But watch my hand for a moment. This cycle of success, as I take you through these 5 different things that we do, when we come to the 5th, there's something interesting that happens to the cycle. It elevates. And we do the same 5 things again. And then it elevates. And we do the same 5 things again. In other words, the 5 things I'm going to share with you will give you a high return on your failure, and you do them continually, but every time you do them again, you do them at a higher level, and you're better because of it. So let me just give it to you very simply. The first part of our cycle of success is testing. We're continually testing. We're trying things that we haven't tried before. We're doing things we haven't ever done before. And we're always in virgin territory. And with all of that testing, we're out on the edge. We feel that if you're not on the edge, you're probably taking up too much room. And so we're saying, well, I wonder if this would work in our coaching company. And I wonder if we tried this with the coaches. I wonder if that would help them. So in this cycle, it all begins with testing. Now, because we test so much, we go to the second part of the cycle, and that's failure. With testing comes failure. With more testing comes more failure. So what you're doing is you're looking at a founder of a company and a leader of the most successful coaching company in the world, that our company has failed more than any other coaching company. I'm sure of it. And why is that? Is because we test more. There's a relationship between how much you test and how much you fail. So we know in our testing, we're going to have some failing. It's okay. We understand that. We expect that. We look for that. Now, what happens is if you test a lot, you'll fail a lot. But don't miss this. The third part of the cycle is you learn a lot. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we test more than other companies. Yes, we fail more than other companies. And oh yes, we learn a lot more than other companies. You see, the fruit of failure is what did you learn from it? So when people talk to me about, oh, I had a terrible failure in my business or in my life, in my marriage, when they're done talking about the failure, I only have one question to ask you, and that's very simply, what did you learn? You see, if you learn from your failure, there's fruit in that failure. Learning is an amazing thing. And the quickest way to learn is to fail fast. And the way to learn more is to fail more often, because we do not learn from our successes. We learn from our failures. And so people that have learned a lot, people who have got a positive return on the failure, it's because they know it's in that failure. That's where the seed of success is. So we test, we fail, we learn. Now, once you learn the fruit of learning, just like the fruit of testing is you fail and the fruit of failure is you learn, once you have learned, the fruit of learning is improvement. The only way you and I can ever improve our life is to learn, to discover something new, something different. That's how we improve ourselves. And by the way, learning is overrated if it's just head knowledge. I didn't ask you when you were succeeding, what do you know? I asked you what you did. It's the improving of myself. It's where I make the changes in my life. Oh my, I learned this. Now, how do I improve my life? How do I make myself better because of what I know from what I have failed, from what I have tested? Improvement is the fruit of this cycle. What you're doing is you're doing this cycle of success to get a return on failure for one reason: to make yourself better, to improve your team, to improve your business. Improvement is the fruit. It's the reason you go through this cycle of success. Now, there's one more stop, and that's after improvement, and that is you re-enter. Get back in the game. Okay. But when you re-enter after you've improved, remember how this works? Once you complete that cycle, when you get to that fifth part, you re-enter, guess what? You've already improved. So you re-enter, but you're on a different level than you have been before. You see, it's what I called layered growth. Your growth in your company, your growth in your personal life, it looks like this. And when you do the 5 parts of the cycle, you just keep improving yourself, and you keep getting better. You get better, your team gets better, your company gets better. Now, that's the cycle of success, and that's the process. That's the process that you and I go through to get the positive return on failure. By the way, take one part out of that cycle, it doesn't work. If you just test, but you don't learn from your failures and improve from your failures, then when you re-enter, you just don't get any better. Sometimes we overestimate tenacity and resilience. We kind of love that person who has gone through adversity, and it's kind of like life keeps knocking them back down, but they keep getting back up, and we say, wow, they don't quit. They just stay in the game. I admire their tenacity, their fortitude. This is not a picture of a tenacious person. This is a picture of a stupid person. Why, when you get knocked down, would you just get back up and hit adversity again without learning from it and improving and changing from it? You see, the moment I learn and improve, that's when I get back up, because now I'm not going to hit that same issue because I fixed myself. I fixed it. I improved the situation. So that's how you get a return on failure, by developing a process to get that return. Let me give you one other thing in closing before we do the Q&A. Number 5, you need to encourage others with your failures. I think that leadership makes a huge mistake when they pretend that they're perfect, when they act as if every decision they made was the right decision. I learned that as a very young leader. I was very successful in my 20s, and I started literally holding success conventions by the time I was 27, 28, 29, and started attracting thousands of people. And I put on a convention, and I asked, it was a 2-day convention, and I had 4 speakers, including me, and each speaker had a half a day to help people become successful. And the first day, both of the speakers talked about their success, and they were very successful. And there was some of it was very encouraging. But by the end of the first day, I could see that the attendees were getting a little discouraged because all they heard was success, success, success. The next morning, the third speaker did the same thing, talked about all of his successes. And by noon, I realized I had a problem. There was no one admitting failure. There was no one talking about when they fell, how they got back up, how they handled that adversity. They all acted like you just make the right decisions and you just easily become successful. So I skipped lunch that day, and I pulled aside and got my legal pad out, and I said, I've got to change my teaching. And that afternoon I did. I did a lesson called Flops, Failures, and Fumbles. And I shared with them all the flops, the failures, and fumbles I'd had in business. It had an amazing impact on people because I looked at them and said, isn't it amazing all those misses and mess-ups I've had? And I'm already very highly successful. And it put wind in their sails, and it just gave them a sense of encouragement because, you see, the first 3, they presented success in such a way that the people basically said, I could never get there. That's just better than I could be and bigger than I could ever become. But then I took success and I humanized it. And I helped them understand that, yes, you want to be successful, but if you're going to be successful, it's how you handle failures. If I had a genie wish, where a genie could come out of a bottle and that genie could give me any wish that I could have, I know what my genie wish would be. I wish you could have seen me 50 years ago when I started off as a leader. The problem now, people see me today. I've written over 100 books. I've now written more leadership material than any person has ever lived in the history of the world. I'm known as the #1 leadership expert in the world, and they see all my success, success, success. If you could have seen me 50 years ago, you wouldn't have seen a lot of success. You would have seen a lot of misses and losses, a lot of mess-ups. In fact, if you could have seen me 50 years ago, trust me, you would be greatly encouraged. You wouldn't have heard somebody that can communicate on the level I can now. You had heard a person that didn't speak very well at all. You wouldn't have seen a person that would pull out another book and say, here's the answer for that leadership question. You would be talking to a person that had never written a book. So what I want you to understand is that I want you to have a very realistic, honest approach to your life, to your business, and not only to your successes, but to your failures. I love to play golf, and one of the top 10 golfers ever in the world was a guy named Tom Watson. And Tom Watson and I were playing golf 3 or 4 years ago. And we had just finished hole number 10. I'll never forget it. We were in Atlanta, Georgia. And I got a birdie, and Tom got a par. And as we were walking off of that green, he looked at me and said, John, you beat me on that hole. And I said, yeah, I did, didn't I? And I say, 1 out of 18 holes, I beat the pro. Of course, he won the match. That night we were having dinner, and he said, John, he's won, I think, 54 professional tournaments. He said, there are only 5 tournaments that I won that from the opening day to the end, I never had to make changes or adjustments. I just had my swing so well grooved that I just won. He said, all the other wins, I had to adjust my swing. Sometime during that tournament, I'd have to go back to the driving range, and I would have to make some changes so that I could get my swing just a little bit better. And he said, most of my tournament victories I adjusted my way to success. In other words, he said, I took something I wasn't doing right and I fixed it. In other words, I got a return out of my failure. That's what I want you to have in your life. I don't want you to live a life mistake-free. In fact, that's not a life. And if you think you're living a life mistake-free, you're fooling yourself. I want you to have a lot of success, and I want it to be mingled with failure. But in that failure, you will develop a character, an inside character of tenacity, resilience, the ability to get back up that will make you unstoppable. And that's what this lesson is all about.
You mentioned how people like to separate failure and success. From a growth perspective, I'd like for you to just maybe elaborate on a time when you've had maybe one of your greatest successes and maybe a failure, and what were some of your key takeaways from those situations?
Well, what I've discovered is that we learn most of our lessons from our failures, not from our successes. I have what I call learning lunches. Your people are going to love this. For about 40 years, every month, Jared, I take somebody to lunch, bigger, better, faster, smarter than me. Right. I buy the lunch. I don't even eat lunch. I got 7 questions I want to ask them, and one of the 7 questions is, what's the greatest lesson you ever learned in life? Now, when I ask that, I've asked that question hundreds of times. Every time. Different backgrounds, different people, different times. Every time, there's one thing they're going to have in common. It is the greatest lesson they learned in their life, Jared, was out of a difficult time in their life. I've never had one person say, let me tell you, I was really successful and this is what I learned. It's like, oops, this was not good. Right. So we are much more teachable in our failures than we are. I mean, we're too busy celebrating our successes. So what I would say to all is the fact that it's out of the difficult times that wisdom is a result of learning something during a time when you were greatly pressed. So I tell people all the time, in fact, I think an interesting conversation 2 years from now is talk to me about COVID-19. Because I can tell you, during this crisis, people are either getting better or they're getting worse. Because crisis, that does not leave us the same. It moves us. So it's either going to move us upstream or it's going to move us downstream. That's fact.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. You know, the real estate profession, just like most sales professions or any really, I mean, it's surrounded and centered around relationships, obviously. I'm sure a lot of your success could be contributed to how well you've been able to develop, maintain,
Sure.
and manage relationships.
Sure.
So how do you stay connected and grow your relationships?
Well, I expose myself to new spheres of influence, and I was having a conversation, and in a moment I'll think of his name because everybody would know him because he's a terrific author. But I was in Las Vegas, and the two of us were doing a conference together, and he was talking to me about who luck. And he said, John, he said, the greatest luck you can ever have is who luck, who you meet. And he then went on to talk about you need to be intentional in that. So when I talked about my learning lunches and my 7 questions, one of the questions I ask in that learning lunch is, who do you know that I should know? It's a great question. That question has led me to all kinds of interesting meetings and relationships that have developed out of it. Who do you know that I should know? And it's just really true that if we can expand ourselves wide, know more people, and if we can expand ourselves up, know more important people, widen up, think wide enough, then all of a sudden there's all kind of contacts and possibilities that begin to come our way that would not come our way if we did not move out of that comfort zone and forge and form intentionally new relationships.
Right, and I think I look at my leadership journey, and that's exactly what my mentors have done for me my whole career. And it's not asking things of people, but it's just introducing me and helping me develop and build those relationships.
That's a good point. I love that. Not asking things of people. Help me to know them, build the relationships, and see where it takes me. Absolutely. I like that. Got 2 more minutes. Let me just kind of wrap this up. Because there is kind of a final thought that I want to give you, because this +1 theme is it's so good. So I asked myself when I was doing this lesson, I just did it about 4 days ago. I asked myself when I was doing this lesson, okay, what would keep any of us, from not having a +1 year in 2021? What would keep me from choosing and doing the one thing that would improve my life? I mean, what would do? And the only thing I could think of is a fear of failure. The only thing that I can think of that would keep you or me from having a +1 year in 2021 is for us to look at it and say, well, what happens if I can't do that, or if I don't do that, or if I don't accomplish that? And so let me help you with the fear of failure. Again, this is an hour teaching. It's another lesson completely. But you're smart. Since you're so smart, I can do these things to you in 1 minute and 2 minutes because you're just brilliant. I mean, most crowds, this could be for some realty companies, this could be literally a whole day conference. You understand. You're just quicker than others. What am I going to say about that? Okay, here we go. Here's the problem. The problem is we're always separating failure and success. And so we go and say, I want to be successful, and success is over here. And oh my gosh, failure is clear over here. And boy, I want to succeed. Oh yeah, I want it. But boy, I don't want to fail. Don't want to fail. And so we separate. Can I tell you something? Terrible, terrible idea. You should never, ever, ever separate failure and success. They belong together. They do their best work together. I have never met anyone, including Linda and Christy, that told me their success story without it being filled with losses, misses, mess-ups, and failures. And I've never talked to anybody that had a great company that said, you know what, we finally got to a place where we don't have any more problems, issues, difficulties, failures, adversity. It's just, we just finally rose above all that. Now all is good. Let me tell you something. Anybody's talking to you like that, they don't have a company. They're on drugs. You got to understand, you can't separate failure and success. So as you pick your one thing, whatever it is, as you pick it, I want you to know right now, there'll be days that you do your one thing really well, and there are going to be some days when you don't do your one thing very well at all. In fact, some days you'll do one thing and it wasn't a +1. It kind of seemed like a -1 to you. And I just want you to know it's okay. It's okay. My name's John. I'm your friend. Listen to me. It's okay. It's okay. No one ever climbs each step without slipping, falling, and failing. But it's okay. You see, the value of failure is what we learn from it. And the value of learning is how we improve in it. I'm going to go 2 minutes longer than I'm supposed to go because I just got to share this with you because it just popped in my head and I just don't want you to miss it. I have a coaching company. It's only 10 years old, but it's the largest coaching company in the world, 37,000 coaches now in 170 countries. We got it down. We understand coaching, and we certify coaches. Here's the point. That's not the point. Here's the point. People ask me how we built such a successful coaching company so quickly. It's very simple. We have what we call a cycle of success. A cycle of success. I don't have time to teach it, but I'm going to give it to you because this is worth the whole lesson. Trust me, you just start working this cycle of success, and you're going to be in major, major good woods. At the top of the cycle is test. We're always testing. We're always trying things we've never tried before. COVID-19 was beautiful for this reason, wasn't it? It forced us out of our comfort zone. In fact, everything that you want and don't have, everything that you need and don't have, is because it's out of your comfort zone. If it was in your comfort zone, you'd already have it. And one of the beautiful things about COVID-19, it makes us go out of our comfort zone. Here, what am I doing? I'm doing a virtual conference with you right now. Perhaps I would be live if we didn't have COVID-19. What would the issue is very simple. We've had to adjust. So, okay, test, fail. Because if you do a lot of testing, you'll have a lot of failing because you've never done things before like this. And so you're in virgin territory, so you'll have some misses. So we test, we fail, we learn. Oh my. The value of failure is what did you learn from it? 4, we improve. And finally, number 5, after we improve, we re-enter. And that cycle never stops. It's a cycle. The moment we re-enter, we test some more, we fail some more, we learn, we improve, we re-enter. But what's beautiful about that cycle is every time you go through it, you just go a little higher because you learn from what you've already done. And you just literally build your life, you build your business on it. Okay, that's it. One thing. You can do it. Trust me, I know that. My name's John. I'm your friend.
What if we started seeing failure like we see our time and like we see our money? In other words, when we put money into, we're at the beginning of the year, when we put money into an investment, you know what we're after? A return on investment. When we spend time on something, we as leaders, we're always looking, what's the return on my time? What if we looked at failure as if it needed an ROF, a return on failure? If we realized that in every failure, there was this return that we could get. Now, John's now taught publicly in public settings 3 times this idea of a return on failure. In fact, the last time he taught it was in San Francisco, and he said, I'm going to write a book on it. So I'm not going to go deep into what John did there, but I'm going to tell you something that occurred to me when this idea of a return on failure hit me. What if we all realized that failure was a part of leadership? It's just a part, it's a part of it. It's a part of life. It's a part of leadership. It's a part of getting better. Now we go into risk. We go into audacious dreams being chased with this concept. I'm going to fail. It's going to happen. What is going to be my ROF? What is going to be my return on failure? And then I came up with this idea, and John is going to take this and make it better too, I'm quite sure. But what if we looked at failure in 4 categories? What if we looked at it first as to get a return on failure, fail first? Now, I wish I could tell my 20-year-old self, hey, Mark, be the first one to fail. I wanted to be the first one to not fail. Everybody else around me failed. Let me learn from them. I don't want to fail. What if we said, hey, I want to fail first because I know that failure is the way to success. So therefore, the quicker I fail at something that's bigger than me, the quicker I can accomplish something that's bigger than me. Let's fail first. What if number 2, we tried to fail fast? Hey, I'm going to get this failure thing and I'm going to get to it. So many times we're in the middle of failing, and rather than admit we're failing, we try to cover it up and prolong the failure. What if we just went, boom, I'm failing? And we fail fast, admit it fast, and can get on with the lesson rather than prolonging the failure and living in the failure. Just fail fast. Thirdly, why don't we fail frequently? So many times I felt like, oh, I'm going to fail once in my life. It better be a doozy. Or that's the last time I'm going to fail. And we make these decisions as if a leader only fails once and then he grows up. She is now wise and she failed and it will never happen again. Well, it's not worked like that for me. If it has for you listening and watching today, kudos.
Good.
So I think we need to realize along the path of leadership, failure is going to happen, but it's going to happen frequently if we're trying big enough things. And then the final thing, this comes straight from John, is fail forward. Never fall backward, never fail and retreat, but fail always with anticipation that there's something big around the corner. So yeah, to answer your question, I wish my 52-year young self, yes, I said young, could tell my 22-year-old self, because I thought I knew everything as a 22-year-old, that, hey, it's okay, you're going to fail, just get a return on it. I think life would have been a lot better.
I agree. And where do we get that from? I don't know if we just perceived it. And I don't know if there are so many of you who are driving to work or going to an appointment right now or just listening in the privacy of your home and you're listening to this. But I know when John said, he had his audience that he was speaking to at the time, say it to each other. But I want you to say it to yourself in the car or wherever you're listening right now. And I want you to take a moment just right now and say it out loud. I'm going to make mistakes. Just do me a favor and say that right now.
I'm going to make mistakes.
I'm going to make mistakes.
Oh.
And I think there are so many people, I know that it's been me, and I've been a leader long enough of others, and I know you have as well, Mark, long enough to know that there are some people who are really frozen, fearful of making a mistake for some reason, either of what that meant when they were a kid in their home, either because something that happened to them in school or in a job or somewhere where where maybe even wasn't how they felt, is maybe their job or their parent or their teacher or a coach. Someone made them feel foolish or dumb or terrible or a failure even, because they failed. And so because of that time, because of the mistake that they made, and it might have even been a doozy, my friend. You might be listening today and you made a doozy of a mistake. And for some reason, you can't get past that to make future mistakes. Like, oh, Mark and Tracy and John, you don't know the mistake I made. You don't know this mistake. And there is no clarifying mistake that's like, well, if you make this mistake, you can't move forward. No, the 4 rules Mark just kind of gave us, the 4 kind of failing forward steps: fail first, fail fast, fail frequently, fail forward, that Mark just gave us. That's for anyone, no matter what kind of doozies you've made in the past. We can always fail forward. But Mark, was there a time in your life, because I think all of us in our past could go back to a place in our life where we had a failure that either embarrassed us, shamed us, made us feel really bad or dumb. Was there a time in your life where it clicked for you? Where was it a mistake that you made that you realized, wow, the fear of that mistake was far worse than the actual consequence of that mistake that helped you move forward? Or was it just kind of a maturing process of several mistakes that you realized you kind of talked yourself through it?
Yeah, I love this question, Tracy, because there are several mistakes that took the sting out of failure. It really is. I think of one. I tell the story. I think I've told it on this podcast. I'm sure that I have, of before I started working with John, because of some colossal series of failures and mistakes. I found myself counting potato chips. My poverty line was a bag of potato chips. If I could afford a bag of potato chips, I could count them out and make those potato chips last an entire week if I did my math right and if I kept my appetite in check. And that was truly, I started with John Maxwell's organization, truly counting out potato chips to make bags of potato chips last a week. I had nothing. Literally nothing. Bankrupt, no money. I wasn't bankrupt. I paid all my bills and all that. I didn't have to declare myself bankrupt, but I truly was bankrupt, relationally, financially, emotionally. And I've come to realize that money and having money in the account is nice, but it is not essential. In other words, I take risks now financially. Just recently, in the last couple of years, we've bet everything in a belief that we can make our future bigger, better, brighter. And I'll be honest with you, I signed these documents, I mortgaged house, I did all this stuff, and I didn't even think about it. I'm like, wow, I've lost everything before. There's a rebound in me. And so I never want to lose that and allow acquired possessions to stop me from risking those for the future and the betterment of others around me. And so that would be one example. When you go through that, and I was there because of some mistakes. I did not have to go the destitute route. I made mistakes to get there. But one of my takeaways from that is monetary possessions and financial gain is nothing but a tool to do greater impact. It is not a controlling mechanism to stop me from risking greater impact in the future.
I think it's critical to point out here, crucial to point out here to our listeners. I think they can hear you say that and think, maybe they're assuming. I'm going to make an assumption here. You might be listening and think, oh, Mark Cole can do that. He has the means to make those big steps and mortgage his house or buy all in and not think about it because there's a big safety net underneath there. But what you're saying is you have actually taken away the safety net when you do those things. You aren't leaving a little safety net. You are going all in on something. And these are big deals and big all-ins. And you don't just wake up one day and you get to go big all in. It starts in the potato chip counting days when you don't have a whole lot and you go all in, when there isn't a whole lot to lose, but you're kind of saving your face, saving skin, saving your reputation and what your parents might think or your family might think or your reputation. And those little steps that you took back then when you didn't have a lot to lose, but food for the week, built your security, your confidence to where you can get to that place today. So I think there are probably listeners who might downplay those risks that you take to go all in. And I don't think we can do that fairly without understanding that it's been a whole process to get you there. So I'm thinking now, let's say we have people who, let's flip it a little bit. Maybe they're leading people who are frozen with the fear of making mistakes. And if they don't know their people well enough, which it's really important that we know the people that we lead, they might not understand what is holding them back, those fears that are maybe rooted in childhood, rooted in something in young adulthood that have them, gripped with fear from making a mistake in their professional life. So can you talk a little bit to leaders who are leading people who, or maybe a whole group of people in their organization who are gripped with fear and who aren't taking necessary steps or risks in their professional lives that are necessary in order for the team to move forward? How does a leader move the team forward if they're gripped with fear of mistakes?
I think that you really got to grasp what John's saying in point number 2. Don't make the biggest mistake of all, which is doing nothing. I love what you said. There is no safety net when you're going all in. That defies the whole concept of being all in, pot committed,
right.
Over it. There's no safety net. I'm out if
right.
this doesn't work. Somebody else has to come and step in because I couldn't make it work. And I think that we've got to get that mindset because oftentimes we risk what we can manage rather than risk what we can't manage. And when we risk what we can't manage, that's all in, and that's making a decision. I'm not going to sit here and do nothing. And that I think that's the biggest thing, Tracy, to capture in this lesson is what is it? John, in the middle of this lesson that he's talking right now, he said he was asked the question a long time ago, what would you try if you knew failure wasn't an option? What a great question. Remember that? You've been asked that question. It's one of those questions. What's the 2 greatest days of a person's life? It's one of those rhetorical questions we've heard over and over again. What would you risk if you knew failure wasn't an option? Or what would you try? John said, I've got a better question for us. What would you risk if you knew failure was going to happen, but you would learn from it? Oh. So there's something so big that I can go in and calculate. I'm probably not going to make it, but it's going to be okay. That's the mindset that we're after because I believe back to this quote I used at the very beginning, failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of success. Ariana, that is exactly right. Ariana Huffington had it right. Success and failure are not opposite, they are codependent. For you to really be successful in your life is going to mean how big you are in your failures. John said it. What was it? Point number 7 says, remember that the size of the person, not the size of her mistakes, determines success or failure. Failure is not failure if you become better in the middle of it. Or failure is not final if you become better in the middle of the experience. That one thing, if I could release all of you from feeling like failure is final and failure is defining of who you are, I believe those are the 2 greatest sources of fear that stops people from trying something so big that failure is probable.
I agree. Well, I will let you close this out, but I just wanted to give one more encouragement to our friends, whether you're watching or listening. You might be having your mind blown a little bit and a little bit of fear is creeping in. Like, dare I believe this? Dare I trust John enough to take me to this next place? And I just want to encourage you, his last point was allow your mistakes to take you to the next level. Let your attitude about your mistakes, forgive yourself, leave it in the past. It's in the past. Leave it there. Don't carry it into your future, friends. And let this be something that really, your attitude, let it determine the altitude of where you go, friends. We're for you.
So many of you, thanks, Tracy. So many of you are listening to this and going, wow, when's John's book on return on failure coming out? I need that. And guess what? You're going to have to wait. But I know out of literally thousands of new listeners and viewers every single week, I know that there's new people out there to John's world. And there's a book that he's written on this that I believe will really help you. One is, it's right behind Tracy right there. She's got it all set up for us. But it's also this book I'm holding in my hand. Sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. And really it helps with the attitude, the perspective with which we deal with failure. I've asked our team if you would give them a discount, if the team would give you a discount as the podcast family, and they have. And so in the show notes, we're going to include a link to be able to order this book. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. We're going to give you a 15% discount when you use the keyword podcast. So make sure that you put that in there for the discount that you will receive. I will tell you, I would recommend you buy a half a dozen, and resource your team with a perspective, especially those of you that are trying audacious, BHAG things in 2022. Get your team to understand failure is not final, and that's the way to do that. There's 2 other episodes that I want to encourage you to listen to and point you toward that will help you with the same subject matter. One is Redefining Failure. It's a podcast we did not too long ago. And then the other is Failure is Not Final. Both of those podcast links can be found in the show note. And really, here's what we're trying to explain to you today. Our standout statement is this: fail forward. Make something happen that is so big.
Not only do I grow, but what do I grow in? And what I grow in is what I call the big picture. I think there are 4 things that allow people to be successful. And I think these 4 things you've got to be good at. You got to be good at relationships. In other words, you got to connect with people. People won't go along with you if they can't get along with you. You just got to be good with relationships. You got to be good with equipping people. You've got to know how to train and develop people, because you can't compound anything in your life unless you get somebody else to do it with you. So all compounding is in training and equipping. You got to be good in attitude, because attitude, if it's good, will let you overcome adversity, which everyone has, and if it's bad, it'll let adversity overcome you. And you got to be good in leadership. You got to be able to influence more people. Now, I think those 4 things you just got to be good at, regardless of what your profession is, what your calling is, what your career is. You better be good with relationships, you better be good with equipping, you better be good with attitude, and you better be good with leadership. At age 25, I decided those were the 4 keys to continuous success in a person's life. And then, when I started writing books, I said, I'll write about those 4 things all the time. If it's a John Maxwell book, it's in those areas right there, because that's the key to people's success. What keeps people buying my books is I'm constantly writing about something that will make them better. And it works for them. Now, you take those 4 things, plus take your giftedness or your strengths. You ought to grow in that area. Whatever you're gifted in. For example, I'm gifted in communication, so I read a lot of books on communication. So whatever your strength is, you want to, but your growth has to be focused on those 4 or 5 things in your life. Now, it doesn't mean you can't grow in any other thing. It just means your greatest return for growth will be if you stay in those sweet spots. And then you need to measure your growth, because what gets measured gets done. And so every year at the end of the year, I ask myself, how well did I do in this area? Am I getting better? Am I growing? Am I developing myself? How can I measure that? And then how can I apply what I'm learning? Because the moment that I learn something, the question I have is, how can I now apply that to my life, and how can I pass it on to the people that are on my team? That's how a leader thinks. How do I apply it to me? How do I pass it on to my people? That's why I'm so excited about you being here. Because you all represent hundreds of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. And everything that you're learning, you're saying, okay, here's how I apply this to me. This is how I work in my life. How do I apply it to the people on my team? And that's what we're here for, to help you do. We're here to help resource you to not only learn these principles yourself, but to learn it for your people. And then after I do all of that, I become intentional in the following things. Number one is I make growth my number one priority in my life. A day without growing is unacceptable to me. So I'm conscious of my need 24/7 to grow. And I'm constantly doing it. Number two, I look for growth opportunities in every situation. I not only make it my number one priority, but I ask myself, okay, what kind of growth opportunities are around me? Have I taken advantage of growth opportunities? Growth conversations. Number three, I ask questions that will help me grow. Growth doesn't come looking for me. I have got to be proactive. So I ask questions all the time about growth. And I'm asking, if I'm with you, I'm going to ask you, what are you reading? Who are you talking to? What experiences has caused you to grow? I'm just asking you questions all the time. I'll drive you crazy with questions. The last time Jim Collins and I got together, we were speaking at the same convention out in Las Vegas. We were having lunch, and he sat down, and I sat down, and I kid you not. We sat down, and we looked at each other, and we both pulled out our card. It was like quick draw McGraw here. And we just leaned forward because we knew we had an hour and 15 minutes. We were going to cut all the other stuff out. He had questions asked me, I had questions asked him, and I threw out the first question. He said, that's not fair. He said, I have questions. I said, but I was first. So I get the first question. And we went back and forth, question. Why did we do that? Because Jim Collins and I know something. The only growing we're going to do isn't talking about where we've been, what we've done, who we know. Are you not tired of all that stuff? The only growing we're going to do is asking questions to the other person and learning from that person. Everything I've learned has become a result of a question, not a result of an answer. So you got to constantly have this curious mind to ask questions. So I ask questions that will help me grow. I file what I learn every day. Every day I take what I'm learning and I file it in my iPhone. I put categories on it and I put it in there, what I'm learning and how I'm growing. And I make sure as soon as I learn something from you, I put it in my iPhone immediately. Because the number one time waster is looking for things that are lost. And you know why you lost them? You didn't have a place to put them in the first place. So my systems give me the place to put things so I don't lose them, so that I can go back to them and I can learn from them and I can grow from it. And then I pass on to others every day. I pass on to others what I'm learning. I can hardly wait to tell somebody else, because every time I pass on to others what I've just learned, it reinforces the learning in me. And it allows me to kind of put that just a little stronger in my life, that impression just a little bit deeper in my life. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up by, I love this. Some parents of a little girl named Elizabeth Dodd, who was age 9. Her parents would listen to my teachings. They had video programs, and they were always listening, reading my books. And so their 9-year-old daughter was just kind of hanging with them and picking up this stuff. And so this was written by Elizabeth Dodd, who's age 9. She said, John Maxwell says, always work on yourself more than others. He also says, always work on yourself before you work on others. I say, hey, he's right. Because if you work on others before yourself, you won't know what you're doing. Elizabeth Dodd, age 9. I thought, the kid gets it. The kid gets it. I hope we get it today. I hope we get it. People know me for leadership, but I'm passionate for growth. And the reason I'm passionate for growth is if you're going to develop the leader within you, trust me, it's going to be because you want to get better every day. And what's so beautiful is if you'll do this, in 1 year, to be honest with you, you won't recognize yourself. You'll have to reintroduce yourself to yourself. And you're going to have to say, I'm amazed how much you've grown in a year. What keeps me young is my passion to grow. I just don't have time to die. And it's so good, I don't want to die. That's what I want for you. Many times people will come to me and they'll say something like, John, I would like to spend a day with you. I understand that thought. I understand that comment. They're really saying, John, I'd like to see what your day is really like. And, every day has a lot of things that are different about it. But that question and that thought brought me to a lesson I kind of want to teach you today called 5 Things That I Do Every Day. And the 5 things that I do every day, I would say, are the secret of my success. I've often said that your daily agenda, what you and I do every day, determines the level of our success. You let me spend a day with you, and I just need to hang. I really don't need to interact with you. I just need to watch you. If you gave me 1 day, I could promise you by the end of that day, with pretty good accuracy, I could tell you how successful you're going to be. Because there are certain things that you just pick up from spending a day with. I mean, if I have a day with you, I'm going to pretty well figure out what kind of attitude you have. If I spend a day with you, I'm going to figure out how well you prioritize. If I spend a day with you, I'm going to figure out if you're disciplined or not. I mean, it doesn't take long to find the ingredients that make people successful. So when people say, well, John, if I spent a day with you, what would I see? Well, it depends. Some days I'm writing, some days I'm speaking, some days I'm in the studio like I am today. So my days are different. But there are 5 things every day that I do intentionally. Now, these 5 things, here's the good news. These 5 are so simple, every one of you can do these. This is not complicated, it's not hard, it's not difficult. They're all simple. But they are all powerfully successful if you do it. The key is action. You've got to do them. So let me give you the 5 things that I intentionally do every day. Number 1 is I learn every day. I have a capacity and curiosity to keep learning. I never have gotten to this place where, some people have this kind of, I've been there, done that kind of a mindset. Oh, I've been there, I've done that. Well, I've been a lot of places and I've done a lot of things. But been there, done that doesn't do anything to provide any kind of a growth for tomorrow. You see, the only guarantee that I have that tomorrow's going to get better today is that I'm growing today. And the only way that I can grow today is by learning. My mentor, John Wooden, had a great statement. He would look at me often and he'd say, John, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts. And what Coach Wooden realized is there's a whole bunch of people that they get stuck on know-it-all. They get stuck on the fact, I've been there and done that, and all of a sudden they cease to be hungry to learn. They cease to have a desire to perhaps stretch in their capacity. And so just never lose that desire to read and to listen and to learn and to grow. A fun story. I was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I was speaking for a large company, and the CEO, I was in his office, and he had to leave the office for about 5 minutes, and I said, I'll just sit here and wait on you. And I looked up at his bookshelf, and he had a lot of my books, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm thrilled. He has my books, he reads them, and so I thought I would surprise him, and so I would maybe sign a few of them. So I reached up and picked one of them up and opened it up to sign it, and as soon as I opened it up, I thought, wow. This book hasn't been opened before. He hasn't read this book. So I thought I'd have some fun, and I just put his name there, and I just wrote the words, please read me. And then I signed my name. I stuck it up, pulled down another book, opened it up. I thought, oh, this one hasn't been read either. And so I put his name, and I put, please read me also. And I signed my name and stick it back up. And you can see where this one's going. I pulled down the third book off the bookshelf, and it hadn't been opened. It hadn't been read. And so now I'm getting a little more desperate. So I put his name, and I said, please read me also. And then I put, when you do, call. And I put my cell phone number in there, and I signed it and put it back up, and he never called me. Okay. Now here's a person who was in a high position, but he stopped learning. There came a time where he somehow thought, wow, I know enough. I am enough. And I just want you to know that we don't know enough. So every day I learn. Every day, number 2 is I reflect. Reflection turns experience into insight. So when people say experience is the best teacher, that's just not true. Yeah, it's a common statement, but it's a stupid one, to be honest with you. If experience were the best teacher, everybody, as they had more experience, as they got older, they get better. And most people, they're getting older, they're not getting better. They've got more experience, but they've never evaluated the experience. You see, it's not experience that's the best teacher. It's evaluating the experience. It's out of the what did I learn from what I just did that really brings the fruit? So when my children were growing up, every week we would do different experiences. And they knew that I'd ask them 2 questions. If I asked my children this question once, I've asked them 10,000 times as they grew up. We'd finish the experience, and I'd look at them and say, hey, what did you love? What did you learn? What did you love? What did you learn? For a kid, they can tell you what they love a lot quicker than what they learned. And so I always ask it that way. And when my grandchildren came along, I've asked them now thousands of times, what did you love? What did you learn? What am I doing? I'm teaching them to evaluate their experience, because awareness is huge. Listen, you have to know yourself to grow yourself. And one of the great mistakes we make in life is the fact that we're unaware. And so every day I reflect so I can increase my awareness. Every day I reflect, every day I learn, every day I write. You say, well, of course you write every day, John. You're an author. You're a writer. No, I write every day because writing does 2, maybe 3 things for me that are essential for my development. One is I write. Whenever I get a good thought, I write it down. In fact, today I was doing an interview and a podcast, and the person I was interviewing, in fact, it was Don Yeager. He said something that was very important. So right in the middle of the interview, I'm getting my iPhone out and I'm writing down his thought as code because I don't want to lose it. So I write to capture the thought. I also write to clarify the thought. Writing brings clarity to a thought much better than just listening. And there's something about when you see it, that it just becomes more clear. And I also write to create the thought, because what I've found is once I start writing a thought down, many times it leads to another thought. A great idea is an accumulation of several good ideas. And so every day I write. I write so I can capture the thought, clarify it, maybe even create another thought. Every day, number 4, I share. It's very important for you to take what you're learning and pass it on to others. And it's very important for you to talk your thought out. There's something magic that happens with sharing your thought. 1 + 1 equals, if you have a good thought and you share a good thought with me, and I have a good thought and I share it with you, the natural thing is to say we have 2 good thoughts, but usually that stimulates another thought. 1 + 1 equals 3 in sharing. There's a compounding that once that we begin to verbalize. And so there's a beautiful thing about sharing that thought. And then every day I not only share the thought, I sustain the thought. Every day I work on continually thinking about what I learned. The true experiment, they put 10 people in a room and they give them a thought. They give them an idea and they said, we want you to take that idea and maximize its potential. An hour later, they go into the room with 10, and they've taken the idea, and obviously they're sharing, and it's gotten better. And then they remove 5. It doesn't matter which 5 they remove. It doesn't matter at all. It could be the smartest 5, the dumbest 5. I don't care. And they give the last 5 one more hour to think upon that idea 100% of the time. At the second hour, the idea has gotten better. Why? It's because it's been sustained. It was held on long enough to really develop. So every day I sustain my thinking. Every day I share my thinking. Pretty much every day I write my thinking. Every day I reflect my thinking. And yes, every day I learn so I have something to think upon. Simple, isn't it? You can do that. I would like to talk to you about the power of 5. And the power of 5 is an incredible principle. It comes really from a teaching that perhaps you've heard of before called the rule of 5. But let me just illustrate it for just a moment for you, and then let me just apply it to your work and to your business. If I have a tree in my backyard and I want to cut it down, there are just 5 things that I need to do to accomplish that task. First of all, every day I go out to that tree and I know what I want to accomplish. I just know what I want to accomplish. I want to cut the tree down. And every great work begins with an understanding of what is that goal that you have that you want to achieve. So step 1 in being successful is I need to know what I want to accomplish. But not only do I know that I want to cut that tree down, but every day I go out to my backyard and I pick up an axe and I take it to that tree. And as I take it to that tree, I swing that axe 5 times, just 5 times. Lay the axe down next day, every day, pick up the axe, go to the tree 5 times. You see, if I want to really succeed in life and in my business, I not only need to know what I need to know what I want to accomplish, which is cut down the tree. I need to have the right tool. I've got the axe. So every day I'm going to the same tree, and every day I'm using the right tool. Now, what would happen, let's just say, what would happen if one day when I went outside, I looked at another tree in my yard, I said, oh, you know what, I need to cut that one down. So I took that axe and I went to that tree, and the next day I thought, you know what, that third tree, it needs to be cut down. So I'm over there working on that. Now you can see that, I'm never going to get my goal accomplished because I've lost focus. I'm going to just have a bunch of scarred trees in my backyard. So as you're thinking of the power of 5, you got to know what you want to accomplish, cut the tree down. You have to have the right tool, the axe. You've got to stay focused. You sure do. And not only do you have to stay focused, but you have to be consistent. So every day I go out. Every day I pick up the axe. Every day I go to the same tree. Every day I swing 5 times. There's a consistency. Consistency compounds. There's a consistency about me doing the priority, the main thing, and keeping it the main thing every day. And the last part is that none of this would happen. The tree would never fall down. The goal would never be accomplished if I fail to take action. If I just sit on the porch and talk about how I want that tree to be cut down, but I never move from good intentions to good actions, the tree's never going to fall. So this beautiful story illustrates that you know what you want to accomplish, get the right tools, stay focused, be consistent, take action. If you do those things, you'll accomplish what you really want to accomplish. Now, here's what I know. And I just want to read this to you because it's so essential. When you discover the 5 things that you must do every day, and you do them, you will experience the power of 5. And the power of 5 are the essentials. What really matters? What really matters in your business? What are the 5 things that you need to be doing every day in your business to succeed and do well? Well, I'm going to share with you what I think are in an organization like yours, what are the 5 things that you need to do that are essential that you do every day that are just going to help you succeed very well. Let me give you the 5 things that I think that really matter. Number one, growth matters. The only guarantee that you and I have that tomorrow's going to be better than today is that we're growing right now. I'm 73, and people ask me continually about my success. And seemingly, my world is getting bigger and better, and my companies are doing more and helping more. And they're always saying, well, John, what's the secret? I mean, you're still writing books, you're still speaking, you're still creating, you're doing transformation in countries invited by the presidents of those countries. What's the secret? And the secret is personal growth. You see, getting older is automatic, but getting better is not. A lot of people are getting older, but they're not getting any better. And the reason is they've not increased their capacity to growth. And what I learned in my 20s when my mentor said growth is not automatic, what I learned was that I needed to be intentional in my growth, and I have been. And I'm still growing today. In fact, I'm learning more, growing more, writing more books than I ever have in my life. And the reason why is because I've increased what I call my growth capacity. The more that you grow intentionally, the more you have capacity to grow more. And at 73, my capacity to grow is ridiculously off the charts. And one of the things I really value about what you do in your organizations, I salute you, I bow before you, is that when I think of what you're doing in your organizations, when I get around organizations that are in direct marketing, et cetera, one of the things you do exceedingly well is you put people on what I call the path to personal growth. I've met thousands of people around the world who are in an organization just like yours, and they started reading the right books, started getting exposure to the right people. And I know of no group of people that has a passion for personal growth and self-development more than you. I salute you for that. It's a great contribution to the people that become a part of your organization. Even if they never even excel in your organization, you're helping them to excel as people and as individuals, because all of a sudden they become to be passionate and intentional about their personal growth. So growth matters. The second thing in the Power of Five, number two, is I believe that connecting matters. The ability to connect with people. The ability to find people where they are. You see, before you can lead people, you have to find people. And so to build a great business, relationships, and the ability to find common ground, and the ability to ask questions, all these things that help you connect with others, it just makes a tremendous, tremendous difference. Learning how to motivate people, learning the 7 motivations. In my book, The Power of Five, I talk about the 7 motivations, because one of the things that leaders do really well is they lead people differently. Managers try to lead everybody the same, but leaders realize that people are motivated for different reasons and different things. And so they don't try to motivate everybody the same. They find out what it is of those 7 motivations that I talk about in the book. They find out they find out which one is the primary motivation, and they lead them according to what motivates them as an individual. So growth matters, connecting matters. Thirdly, mindset matters. How we think. The greatest gap between successful and unsuccessful people is the thinking gap, how people think. I'm not talking about being smart here. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about how people think. This is huge. I was at a team meeting today with Mark Cole, who literally is the CEO that runs all of the John Maxwell enterprise, which is 7 different companies. And we were talking about just principles that we believe in and are passionate about. And one of those principles is the fact that there's always an answer. And so even like, COVID-19 and all the issues that we have that are facing us that have put what I would call a depression blanket on America. Here's what I know. What I know beyond any shadow of a doubt is that there's always an answer. And once I understand that, it keeps me in the game. If I think there is no answer, it's an easy exit. It's an easy way for me to just give up. And nobody ever quit their way to the top. And so, but when I know that there's always an answer, it keeps me in the game. The mindset such as put more emphasis upon sowing than you put on reaping. I mean, honestly, reaping's automatic. It's sowing that has to be intentional. The mindset of failure and success go together. I mean, there's so much of this that I could just spend, an hour teaching each one of these principles. But we do a terrible injustice to people when we separate success and failure. And so many times I think in your type of organizations, this happens where we just talk about this person that's been highly successful. And, I started off in the company and I'm not doing near that well. And pretty soon I think, well, I'm not qualified, or I'm not gifted, or I'm not fit for this, or gosh, they're all better than me. Don't put success here and failure there. That's not the way life is. Success and failure, they belong together. I've never met a successful person that didn't have a lot of failure. And they learn from it and they improve because of it. In fact, it's those learning, improving moments of failure that make them successful. This is huge. So this is all in mindset. Mindset matters, Wow, it's so true in every area of our life. Connecting matters, growth matters. Number 4 in the Power of 5 is leading matters. It just does. My life was totally changed in my young 20s when I came to the conclusion that everything rises and falls on leadership. Now, I'm 73, so go back 50 years ago, it was just a new thought to me. Wow. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And when you have a good leader, things go well. When you have a bad leader, things go bad. Now, 50 years later, you see, as you get older, you have less certainties. When I was young, I had a lot of certainties, had a lot of answers. Today, I have less certainties and less answers. Why? Because life has taught me that it's not always black and white. But the few certainties I have today, I'm more certain of than ever before. So my certainties are really certain in my life. And one of those certainties that I'm more certain of 50 years later is the fact that everything rises and falls on leadership. Leading truly matters. And the ability to lead well, the ability to teach your people how to be good leaders, how to lead themselves so they can lead others, how to be the example for others. I mean, it's absolutely life-changing. So I've given you 4 of the 5 in the Power of 5. And all of them are essential every day in your business. I mean, just think about it for a moment. Wow. You want your people to keep growing because that's their future. As you grow your people, you grow your company. You want your people to know how to relate, connect, understand what motivates people, motivate people from their motivation so that you can really bring out the incredible best in their life. I mean, you just want that for them. You just know that they need it. You want them to have the right mindset. It matters how they think. It matters how they lead. And the last thing, number 5, is significance matters. It just does. Success is about you and me. It's about what we do for ourselves, okay? And success is good. It's very good, in fact. But I know a lot of successful people. Man, a lot of them. They're, got a lot of money, got all the stuff, but they're not happy. Not happy at all. But once you leave the world of personal success and what am I gaining for myself, and you cross over to the world of significance, which is now it's all about adding value to others. No longer are you consumed with adding value to you, but your world begins to be expansive and you see others, and now you're wanting to add value to others. This is the world of significance.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.